ladies and gentlemen, can I please invite you to take a seat as we're about to start the event. Tra bo, Corelli Sedi, gael erbyn bach o'r trefniadau ar gyfer iechyd a diogelwch y tŷ. Tydan ni ddim yn disgwyl y lan tân heno, felly os bydd y lan yma'n mynd, ydych chi am adael yr adeilad cyn cyntaf yr allwch chi. Mae yna drws argyfl i'r chwith fan hyn, a drws arall ydy'r ffordd wrthyn ni fewn trwy'r fynedfa. Diolch yn fawr. Mae'r toiledau ar gael i'r dde o'r brif fainc yma, brif fynedfa, i lawr y corridor i'r dde ac mae'r toiledau ar y chwith. Diolch yn fawr. Ladies and gentlemen, a few housekeeping just to start off the evening. There's no fire drill planned for tonight, so if the fire alarm does go off, I'd ask you to vacate the building as quickly as possible. There's an emergency exit to the stage left here, and the other exit is through the way we came in through the entrance. Thank you very much. The toilets are down to the right-hand side of the reception desk there, located on the left at the far end of the corridor. So, without further ado, fwy o oedi gael croesawu chi i'r noson. Noson lansio adroddiad y Comisiynydd Cyflwyr Genedl. So, without further ado, may I welcome you to the evening, the launch of the Commissioner's Report, State of the Nation. And to open the evening, could I invite Phyllis Priest to come to the stage? And Phyllis is Chair of the National Pensioners Convention Wales, and she's going to open the evening with a few words. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Older People's Commissioner for the Wales, the first state of the National Report. My name is Phyllis Priest. And like it was just said, I'm the chair of the National Pensions Convention. Before I go into my bit of a report, I'm going to tell you a little story. And the story is that when the strategy from older people took place many years ago, and I was one of the ones involved in it, and I was quite concerned because they told us that we had 3 years to wait for the commissioner. Now, older people want it today or tomorrow. We don't want to wait 3 years. But we waited, and eventually we got our commissioner. And I felt so proud as a Welsh woman to be able to say that we were the first country in the world, Wales, to have a commissioner for older people. So everywhere I've gone, I've always promoted this. We have gone from strength to strength with now we're on to the 3rd commissioner, and I'm very proud to be asked to speak here tonight. I feel that with Helena, this lady, she knows where she's going and she knows what she's doing. If she will turn up for a meeting, if it's 6 or 60, she will not just stay to give a speech. She stays and she mingles. And she mingles with the people in the streets that's in that meeting. And I think that's what's needed with a commissioner for older people. People now can speak to Helena wherever she goes, because they know who she is. And I feel at this moment in time, she has done more in the last year than I thought was possible. So I really am proud to call this lady my friend as well as being my commissioner. Over the years, we have worked closely with the Commissioner's Office to ensure that older people, voices are heard and their experiences are understood, so that the changes in policies and practice needs to improve older people's lives can be delivered. Having worked with Helena over the past year or so, I know she's committed to improving older people's lives, not only through her own work and priorities, but also by building on the positive work that are already underway in many parts of Wales, and by bringing people together, and by God she does that. Like she has this evening, so that new connections can be made and new partnerships partnerships can be formed. Like all of us here tonight, Helena wants to make sure that people can access the services and support they may need as they get older. That means celebrating the fact that we are an ageing society, recognising the huge contribution older people make to our lives and our communities, and ensuring that people can access the services and the support they may need as they get older. By working together, using our vast knowledge and expertise we have viewed tonight, we have a real opportunity for Wales to lead the way. Which brings me on to the reason we are all here. The Commissioner State of the National Report. Hang on, I got you in a page. The report draws upon a wide range of evidence, research and data in order to highlight the issues and challenges that can affect people's experiences of growing older, and sets out the action that needs to be taken to improve older people's lives. As you see, the report covers a variety of topics: health and well-being, loneliness, older people's finances and poverty, the impact of ageism, employment, the prevalence of abuse, criminal justice, access to community services, transport, housing, and the list goes on. The report reflects the breadth of issues that could affect any of us as we get older. I think this is one of the strengths of the report. It demonstrates how older people qualify and the quality of life can be impacted in a number of ways, and compels us to consider how different issues may interact with each other, how one issue may be compounded by another. It demonstrates the needs for us to look at things in a holistic way and to ensure there is a joined-up approach to dealing with issues across different policy areas. I'm sure the report findings will spark some really interesting discussions and debate about how we can improve the lives of older people across Wales. And I'm particularly looking forward to hearing from the cross-party panel about how they would tackle the issues identified by Helena. What's really important though, and again, something I think we should all agree with, that the findings of the report must lead to meaningful action for older people, that the issues and the challenges they face are tackled. And I actually think this is what our Commissioner is doing. That's why it's so positive to so many people here tonight who can all play a part in making the changes happen, who can shape the agenda to ensure Wales gets it right for older people, today and in the future. And I really think we have got a future. I think that we are going in the right direction. With our Commissioner, plus our excellent staff, the team I think I call them, I think they are doing a fantastic job. And they are there for all. Not just being in an ivory tower, they will connect with you. And that's what the people of this country wanted. So once again, I am very proud to be a Welsh woman, and proud that we've got the first Commissioner in the world. So before I hand over to Helena to discuss the report in more detail, I'd just like to say thank you all for attending tonight. Now it's a great pleasure to welcome to the stage the Older People's Commissioner of Wales, Helena. I can't say the other words, so I'm not saying it.
Thank you so much. I'm quite overwhelmed now, actually, and thank you so much for your kind words. And it's been an absolute privilege to work with you and all the older people I've met over the last year or so. I think no greater accolade to say that I'm not just your Commissioner but your friend as well. And as we say, right back at you, Phyllis. It's a pleasure to know you. Så måste Chris O'Connor good evening everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all on this International Day of Older Persons, where we stand in solidarity with people across the world who are celebrating ageing and older people today. And I'd like to extend my very warm welcome to you all as well. I'm hoping that the clouds aren't going to suddenly open and we're going to get thunder and lightning, but if we do, I hope it comes at a really dramatic moment in my speech, in which case it'll be entirely planned. So can Wales be the best place in the world to grow older? That was the starting point for working on the State of the Nation report. It looks at the experience of growing older in Wales, and the key trends, the key differences across the older population. And in particular, looks at the three priorities that I'm working on as Older People's Commissioner: to end ageism and age discrimination, to stop the abuse of older people, and to enable everyone to age well. It identifies what needs to change and where we need to take action. And I'm going to talk about each of these in turns and what the evidence and data tells us. But I want to start with why I think we should aim to be the best place in the world to grow older. And the first is to change the narrative on ageing and the negative perspective that is often brought to bear. The focus is only on the negative, the burden of an ageing population, the demands of an ageing population, the pressures on our public services. If that's all that we talk about, we do a huge disservice to older people. But we also fail to grasp the opportunities of an ageing society and to celebrate the fact that we are living longer, which after all is much better than the alternative. And secondly, I think we should be aimed to be the best place in the world to grow older because we can be. There is so much to celebrate about growing older in Wales today, as actually the State of the Nation report demonstrates. 90% of older people in Wales feel in control of their lives. 80% feel they can do what matters today. And you'll hear a little bit later from Maureen on the video that we're going to show you about the experience of being older. Maureen said, "I like being older because I have more confidence now. I can go where I want, say what I want, and do what I want. I don't have to answer to anyone." And actually, that's exactly what most of us, I'm sure, want to do. And we have that to look forward to. And over the last year or so, it's been a real privilege for me to meet creative and dedicated people working and volunteering in community groups, in charities and social enterprises, in public services, and indeed in political service too. And I've seen such positive impact. Community groups bringing generations together to combat loneliness and improve mental health. Personal and compassionate care and support for people living with dementia and their carers. People working hard to join up health and care. People working hard to improve people's homes. And we also have some very positive legislation with a clear focus on rights and well-being. And notwithstanding all the challenges that we face, and you know as well as I that there are many, there are places and services where I think we are already leading the way in Wales. Where actually I visited and I can't think of anywhere else in the world that do it better than we. So the second reason we should be looking to be the best place in the world to grow older is because we're already part of the way there. And the third reason is what I've more recently thought about. I think the country that's the best place in the world to grow older is the country that dares to bring into the open and doesn't hide the most difficult issues facing older people that have been with us for years and years. Things like ageism, things like abuse. A country that faces up to these and takes collective and concerted action to change them, I think is the best place in the world to grow older, and I think that's what we can do. In short, Wales has the opportunity to lead the way. So what does today's report tell us? Well, as Phyllis said, it provides a wealth of information and evidence around growing older in Wales. But actually, one of the biggest things it shows us is where there isn't data and where older people's experiences are therefore rendered invisible. And this isn't just an invitation for those of us who are trying to find evidence of what's happening and what needs to change. It's much more serious than that. How can policymakers and decision makers get it right for older people without the evidence about older people's experiences? And the lack of data can suggest to an issue when they are. We need to remember that old adage that an absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And is this failure to collect and report on older people's experiences actually evidence-based discrimination, of not upholding older people's rights, of not enabling older people to be seen or their voices heard, of not valuing or seeing as relevant older people's experiences? And I hope that's something we'll debate later. So turning now to the reports, I'm not going to blind you with lots of statistics, you can go away and read those, but I'm going to give you a few edited highlights from the report. And first of all, a quick look at our demography. We know that our older population is incredibly diverse and increasingly so, but also increasingly unequal. So to start with, here's the graph of men and women living into older age. And you will see that women are still outlasting men. Now men, you are catching up a bit, good news is. But you'll see as we get into older age, the very older age groups, 70% of people over the age of 90 are women. And we know that older age is a positive experience for many, but there are stark inequalities. And in particular, and what I find shocking, the differences in healthy life expectancy. So here you have a chart which shows you the ages that you can expect to live in good health. So men in the most deprived areas of Wales, only 50.6 years in good health. Just over 50 years in good health. And for women, 50.3 years. The difference in healthy life expectancy between the least and most deprived areas for men and women is just over 18 years. The differences in healthy life expectancy within our country, 18 years. And women in most deprived areas are living for nearly 28 years in poor health. Now this cannot be something that's acceptable to any of us. And we have to do more to narrow that gap, to think about how we help more older people enjoy better life. And the report also shows that some things for older people are getting worse. So poverty, for example, which had been falling for many years, is now on the increase. So this chart shows relative income poverty, so that's where a household's income is less than 60% of the median household income. And you've got two lines there, one showing before housing costs and one showing after housing costs. What they both show is that since 2013, poverty amongst older people is on the increase again at 20% and 22% respectively. Some of the things we thought we had sorted and solved permanently, it turns out there are only temporary fixes. And we have to work harder collectively to avoid more older people falling into poverty. We know, and you will know as well as I do, the huge diversity of circumstances and experience, but also those huge, significant and persistent inequalities. So I'm going to come on now to look at the three priorities that I'm working on, and to start by looking at the issue of ageism. Important to remember, under the Equality Act 2010, it's illegal. It is illegal to discriminate against a person because of their age. And yet, we know that it happens. It was 50 years ago, pretty much, that the term ageism was first coined back in 1969 by someone called Robert Butler, who defined it as the stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination against people on the basis of their age. So for 50 years, we've known what it is. We've only had legislation in for less than 10. But actually, we know that ageism is deeply embedded in our language and culture. It's a way of thinking that excludes older people. It's not always deliberate, but it is always damaging. When I've been talking about these issues with older people's groups up and down the country, I've been struck by how many people have talked to me about the impact of living in a society that does not value older people, the impact that has on them. One man I was talking to talks about when he gets up in the morning and he puts on the TV news and and he sees the television talking about burden of aging population, the problem of older people. And he said this to me, he said this, I feel like I've committed a crime by living this long. And we just cannot let this sort of stuff go unchecked. We cannot overestimate the impact that ageism is having. We'll see the video later, one of the women on the video talking about how it feels, and she talks about people kind of in almost saying to her, she's had her day, she's no longer useful anymore. And yet it is illegal to discriminate against older people. So what's happening? Well, we found in the report quite a complex picture in terms of awareness and views on ageism. There's actually a relatively low level of recognition of ageism amongst older people, interestingly. And only nearly a quarter of older people, and actually a quarter of older people do not know the rights that they have. So it's a really critical area for us to change. If you don't know your rights, it's very difficult for you to exercise them. If society is so ageist all the time, it can be very difficult to recognise that it's happening. You can almost begin to internalise and just think, well, that's the way it is. But it shouldn't be the way it is at all. Some older people, about 8%, report they've been made to feel too old to receive health services. And that's certainly something I've heard from older people directly. And one of the ways you can look at whether there's evidence of age discrimination is to follow the money. So in social care, the average spend on domiciliary care for people aged 65 and over across the year is £7,400. That's a lot of money. For people aged 18 to 64, the average spend is £13,100. And that difference cannot be just about need. So what is happening in our services and the way in which we prioritise that actually older people are losing out? Organisations such as the Royal College of Psychiatrists identify significant issues with age discrimination with respect to mental health in older age. And in employment we know there's age discrimination in getting employment, in staying in work, and being given training and learning and development opportunities and promotion. In case any of you are sitting there feeling quite relaxed about that, the evidence shows that age discrimination in employment can start as early as your 40s. It's a public health issue. The Royal Society for Public Health, in a really good report called That Age Old Question, said this: ageist attitudes abound in society and have a major impact on the public's health, and yet they are rarely treated with the seriousness they deserve. And we all have a vested interest in this. Age discrimination is one of the few areas of discrimination that most of us, if we're lucky to live long enough, would experience. So if we are discriminating against older people, we are effectively discriminating against our future selves. And we also have a vested interest in it because research also shows that if you have a positive attitude to ageing, you are likely to live longer. But the good news is we can all take action to challenge ageism and age discrimination, to call it out when we see it or experience it. And in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be launching a campaign on everyday ageism, which is all about identifying where it is happening. If it's happening to you, a loved one, a family member, if you're seeing it on television, if you're seeing it when you're trying to get services, call it out, tell us about it, we'll support you to do that. It's only by making this discrimination visible that we can seek to tackle it. And for some older people, as we know, it won't just be ageism that you're experiencing, because you might also be experiencing racism or sexism as well. And this just compounds the difficulties. I think we can do something here in Wales to challenge it and to change it. And I'm asking each and every one of you tonight to join me in that, because it takes all of us to call it out. I will also be increasing the level of scrutiny I give as Commissioner to Welsh Government and to public bodies in terms of the policies and funding priorities to see if there's age discrimination present in those. We must not build the future on the discrimination of the past and the present day. So I want to talk next about the issue of the abuse of older people. And what does that mean? So the definition that we abuse in the Commissioner's office is a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action which causes harm or distress. This is, in many ways, a hidden issue, and yet it affects thousands of people. And I bet that most of us here tonight will know someone who's been a victim of abuse. Maybe we've experienced it ourselves. Because the types of abuse are many and varied. It can be physical. It can be someone shoving you or slapping you or kicking you. It can be domestic violence. It can be sexual abuse or psychological. Financial. The amount of old people that are now being swindled out of savings and scammed. And the extraordinary impact that that has. I've spoken to so many older people who've been independently managing really well until they swindled out of their money and their savings. And they felt stupid and they didn't want to report it because they thought somehow it was their fault. It can be institutional abuse. It can be neglect. It can be coercive control. And one of the challenges I think we face is that it is not always easy for older people to know where to go. I've learned when talking about this issue with groups of older people that it's not what I say up here that matters, it's the conversations I have at the end of the event with people who then come up and talk to me. And I remember one woman in particular back in the winter who talked to me, and she talked to me about having been a victim of domestic violence most of her life. And what she said, which stayed with me, was that as she became an older woman, she didn't know where to go because she felt the services weren't geared up to older women experiencing this sort of abuse. One of the things we found in doing the report is the difficulty of actually getting data and information on this. So we looked at every type of methodology for calculating abuse and every statistic that there was available. And this is what we found. That the estimates vary from between 16,900 and 138,000 people in Wales experiencing abuse, depending on the methodology that you use. So what this tells all of us is we just don't know. And even those figures probably underreport. And we know it's underreported because old people and sometimes their family and friends may be concerned about reporting it because they're worried about negative repercussions. But we also hide the issue. I've lost track now of the amount of times I've looked at statistics on domestic violence, which only give you the data for people, often only women, between the ages of 18 and 59. Now, I don't know what happens to you between the ages of 59 and 364 days and 60 that is so magical that that domestic abuse disappears. The dangers in the way the data is set out is we think it's data, we think it's objective, we think it's telling us the truth, and it can imply that there's no issue. The crime survey for England and Wales has been reporting domestic abuse between the ages of 16 and 59, as if it isn't an issue. Now there is some change happening there, and they're looking to increase the age limit for self-completion up to the age of 74. So I suppose that's progress, but why does it stop at 74? And it doesn't cover people living in care homes. So there is no single data set that provides a complete picture on the scale and type of abuse experienced by older people. But we cannot, in fact, let that get in the way of us taking action. We have to take action. But we have to challenge organisations that are publishing data that implies it's not an issue for older people. Because that, I think, is discrimination. It is making older people's experiences invisible as if they are not worthy of reporting. At local authority level, we know under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, the local authorities must keep a record of safeguarding reports made about suspected abuse or neglect of an adult. A third of all these reports related to women over the age of 65. A third. So this is a huge issue that we know about. And when we carried out polling, we found that 21% of older people in Wales knew an older person who's experienced some kind of abuse. But only 1 in 5 women and 1 in 5 women and 1 in 3 men wouldn't know to go if they needed support. So it is a society-wide issue. It's an issue for each and every one of us. It's an issue for the police, it's an issue for health professionals, it's an issue for social services, but actually it's an issue for all of us. It's an issue for our friends and families. So many of you will know that my predecessors, my team have been working hard for a number of years to stop the abuse of older people through training and provision of information and working with many of you here. And we are taking that further forward because it is such a significant and serious challenge. And I want us to be the nation that works together with older people, with a range of organisations, with the public, with all political parties to do something about it. And I think the time has come for a national plan of action. Because if we don't do that, then more older people will become victims and more will live in fear. We simply have to transform the awareness, the understanding and action on the abuse of older people. Moving on to the third priority now, I want to talk about ageing well. And one of my favourite phrases, which is about adding life to years, not just years to life. And actually there is a huge amount of good things happening in Wales. And as I said earlier, for most older people, we should be celebrating the fact that older age is a good experience. But there are some areas where older people are maybe not able to take part in the way that we would hope. So which age group do you think are most likely to be going on to arts, cultural or heritage activities? Which age group do you think? Well, you might think it's old people. You might think retired people, people with time on their hands. It's not actually. People between ages 16 and 39 are most likely to be accessing arts, cultural or heritage activities. And in fact, the least likely are people over 75. So what's that telling us about accessibility, transport, someone to go with, being able to afford to go? If you think about the internet, we're living in an increasingly online world. 60% of people over 75 are not using the internet. So if we move to online only, we are excluding 60% of people over the age of 75. If there was any doubt that it is foolish to move straight online, the recent issue with the renewal of bus passes online, I think, proves the point. Yes, we should be enabling and supporting people to get online, but we should remember that many people will not be able to, ever. Maybe some don't want to, maybe some can't afford it. But we must be careful not to exclude older people by just assuming that everyone has now embraced the digital age. And we know that our communities are changing, and some of that is making it harder for older people. Access to local services, to shop, health centres, etc. And we know how important the concessionary bus pass has been for people over the age of 60. It's transformed people's lives. It's enabled people to get out and about, to visit loved ones, to get to health appointments. It's really important that we keep it where it is. And I'm going to say the word. No, not the B word, the toilet word. So I often say when I go out and about, there are three issues that all older people always raise with me, and it's access to GPs, bus services, and toilets. But do you know that more than 100 public toilets have closed in Wales since 2013? 1 in 5 people of all ages say they're not able to go out as often as they'd like because of the concern about a lack of public toilets. 43% they've got an illness or condition that makes needing to go to the loo more frequent an issue. How crazy is this? That we're stopping people getting out and about simply because we can't provide public toilets. It shouldn't be beyond our wit to be able to do this. And I do think all public bodies with a responsibility need to be doing more on this, and we will continue to push for this. And financial support. You saw the data about poverty levels. We need to do much more here to make sure that older people get the financial entitlements to which they're intended. And one of the most important financial entitlements is pension credit. It's for the poorest of older people. The most recent data, the most recent year, showed that up to £214 million of pension credit has gone unclaimed. communities making a difference. And that's something we can do here in Wales. So we must work hard to ensure that we don't exclude older people, whether that's intentionally or unintentionally. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, the really powerful underpinning for the Future Generations and Wellbeing Act, has a really important principle. And the principle is, leave no one behind. And I think that's a principle we need to hang on to in terms of our ageing society and older people. Because my fear is that too many people are being left behind. And there's a danger that's more in the future will be if we take action now. So we need to rethink our communities, our planning and our infrastructure. And many of you will know that one of the things we're working on in the Commissioner's Office is to encourage more places to develop as age-friendly communities, where older people are able to live active, healthy and independent lives, continuing to do the things that matter to them, and to feel valued, included and respected. And the World Health Organization has identified 8 areas for where we should be age-friendly. It's things like outdoor spaces and public buildings, social participation, respect and social inclusion, health and community support, housing, transport, communication, information, employment, and civic participation. And the great thing about making our places age-friendly is if you make it age-friendly, you make it friendly for people. You make it friendly for people with disabilities, for people with young children. And the World Health Global Network of Age-Friendly Cities and Communities has over 900 members now worldwide. And they're none in Wales. Yet. I know there are many places doing hugely exciting work to become more age-friendly. We've started working with local authorities with the aim of supporting them to become part of that network, so that by 2022, every local authority is a member of that World Health Organization Age-Friendly Community Network, learning from each other and contributing to that learning. And next year in particular, we want to work with town and community councils as well to make the changes that we can make locally to make things better. So, the State of the Nation report gives us further evidence about the experience of growing older in Wales and what needs to change. And it also highlights where there are gaps in what we know and where improvements are needed so that the experience of older people are not rendered invisible. We've set out clear calls to action, and I invite you to join me in taking these forward. Each and every one of us can make a difference. And many of the actions needed are within our individual and collective power to take now. We can work to make our communities more age-friendly. We can increase the take-up of financial entitlements. We can improve people's understanding and awareness of abuse and improve the support services available. We can all challenge the negative stereotyping of older people, and we can improve the way we get evidence about older people's experiences. Now, on some of the issues, such as the way the criminal justice system works for older people, it's about us working together in Wales to influence UK legislation. And the Welsh Government has an important task in its forthcoming strategy for an ageing society to be ambitious, to set the right direction and tone, and to be practical in terms of the implementation. So to echo what Phyllis said, there is no time to waste, and we shouldn't waste a moment. So I'm asking you to join me, to sign up to our Everyday Ageism campaign, and you can do that with the team here tonight. To look at how you can commit to being age-friendly, and to help us develop a national action plan to stop the abuse of older people. So let's work together to make Wales the best place in the world to grow older. Diolch yn fawr, thank you very much. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to invite you to watch the video of all the people that I mentioned, all the people from the Coal Industry Social Welfare Organisation and CISWA, talking about their views and experience.
like Kismore, where the old age can come out to the meeting. They take us on road trips and they take us for meals.
I don't feel old, but I like being retired. I didn't want to retire, but now I'm retired, I love it. This school is a joy to come to. It is a joy to come to. We have laughs and all of us get on very well. Get our ups and downs sometimes, but certainly you shouldn't. No. No, seriously, it's a nice place to come to. Yes, it is.
It took all the news away from Amsterdam, all the way up the valley. So after a certain time in the day, you won't be able to tell it from Honeycomb to River. It won't be closed in.
Healthcare is changed a lot. I find now it's so difficult to get an appointment. Got to wait sometimes 3 weeks.
No buses after 6 p.m, which is terrible for the families. Yeah. Can't get about.
When I go in for the evening or to be on the same online, I can't get to my daughter because I just don't understand. If you're still in forms in, quite alright. But online, I don't understand a bit.
Yeah, I live with Glen only. I mean, like I said, I lost my husband in 1986. I never remarried. I'm on my own. Because you're old, and they think that, oh, she's had her day, she's no longer useful anymore. And that's the way it comes over to you. What are you complaining about, or what are you saying? You're a bit of an account.
But I don't think we done anything like that, but they haven't got the patience to listen to us.
I don't think they realise how it makes you feel.
Wales in general, I love it. I think it's a great place, I know. And where we live in a great place. I love it.
Yes, I am. That is the point. I may be old already, but I'm still young at heart.
I love everyone. You know what I mean? I love the youth, I love, and I hope people, well, I'm 85 years of age, and, I've lived this long, and I'm grateful to be here today,
I know they're not here, but should we give them a round of applause anyway? Just some excellent reflections of some of the positives about living and growing older in Wales, as well as some of the challenges. So we're now going to move on to our next phase, which is our debate with our assembly members, all of whom are very committed to the cause in terms of support for older people, all of whom have had some very good and robust discussions with over the last year or so. So can I invite Julie Morgan, Diane Lloyd and Jennifer Saunders please to join up here. So this is nice and cosy. We're going to huddle together for warmth. interesting discussion. So to start with, I'm going to ask each member of the panel just to introduce themselves and to give me your thoughts really on maybe 2 or 3 of the things that have struck you from the State of the Nation report. And then we'll open it out to questions. My colleagues have got microphones, so we've got George over there and Josh over there. So if you want to ask a question, please pick your hand up and they'll bring the microphone to you. It's really important that you use the microphone because if anyone's got hearing difficulties using the lip, they need you to speak through the microphone, and you also need that for translation, so please do use the microphone. So, if I could start maybe with Julie Morgan for your kind of thoughts.
Well, just to say, I'm Julie Morgan. I'm the Deputy Minister for Health and Social Services. I'm the Labour member for Cardiff North, and I've held this post, this Deputy Minister post since last Christmas, and I've had the great pleasure of working with Helena. And I'd really like to start off by saying thank you so much for producing this report, because I think it's, I think it's really great, and to get all that information there all together, it gives us the basis to work on. And some comments on what I felt. Well, I suppose the strongest thing that came over really, that I was so pleased that, as you said at the beginning, that 90% of older people feel so positive, and that 80% feel that they're able to do what they want. And I think that's so important because it just dispels that myth of always thinking of older people as being a burden and all those things that make older people feel demeaned. So I think that is one of the things that I feel very strongly about. And that film, which is actually a fantastic film, also was so positive. So, number 1, the positivity. Number 2, I think some of the things that you've talked about, and that is in the report about things getting worse, that did strike me strongly, and in particular the health inequalities, because I know we have that in Cardiff. You can have 2 wards in Cardiff, one up here where I represent, and one further down the south of the city, and the life expectation is so different, and people start off with such different chances. And really, I think that is a matter of huge concern, so I think that hits me strongly. And then I think I would also then pick up the issue of elder abuse, because that is a hidden abuse, and I think we want to call it out, and we want to make sure that it becomes, everybody is aware of it, and that we take action on it. So let's pick out those 3 things, but I think the whole report is absolutely filled with so many things that we can act upon.
Great, thank you very much. Janet.
Thank you. And first off, can I just say thank you, Helena, to you and your team, not just for tonight, for the report you've written, and for bringing us all together tonight, but generally for everything that you do 365 days a year. I'm the Assembly member for Aberconway, which in itself has an older demographic. We have some of the highest numbers of over 65 and over 85 years old, living within my own constituency. I'm also the Shadow Minister for Social Care, Children, Young People and Older People, and I'm the Older People's Champion for our party, the Welsh Conservatives. So, as I say, I work with Helena and other organisations, Age Cymru, and we are very lucky in Wales that we have a very good network of support of different organisations with one solid aim, and that is to ensure that Wales is a good place that we can all grow older. What struck me in particular about this report, because we do get, as you can imagine as AMs, we get lots of reports to read, and some of them can be more about everything that organisation is doing. And what struck me about this one, I thought I'd better write myself a briefing on the report, so that I've got some of the headline figures. And this for the first time struck me, this report, because there is so much in that report that it's going to be a living document now for me going forward, because you can just turn to it and it really does, it touches all the issues that that affect me as an AM, more importantly affect my constituents and people across Wales. In particular, some of the figures that are really quite shocking, when you think that we think of carers as being, young people. There are 422,000 carers in Wales, and yet only 6,000 So I think that more needs to be done to help carers. Julie made a really valid point, and it was endorsed on the film. Isn't it funny how we're going along in really fast momentum in terms of technology and the digital age, and yet we're going so far back with our bus services being cut. I'm regularly, sort of in the local press most weeks now, fighting a local campaign where the bus company decided to cut off a bus route. And that, at the moment, I'm dealing with one where it means that people now will have to walk half a mile from an isolated village that I have of older people. They're going to have to walk half a mile now to actually be able to catch the bus. The bus has stopped actually going into their village. When I approached the bus company, they just said, well, you know, we have to run it a profitable business. So, as chairman of the petitions committee, I was actually quite glad this week to take a petition in. But buses are for people, not just for profit. So, you know, then it's been mentioned about the toilets. Elder abuse is a big issue. I'm doing a debate tomorrow in the chamber here about caring for our care homes. We have lost so many beds now in our care homes. We're not actually projecting forward. We know the needs, the numbers of carers we're going to need for our older demographic going forward. By 2030, we're going to almost double up on the numbers of domiciliary care workers in that field. And yet, I don't see the sort of those kind of initiatives coming forward. So really, in short, this document is good for government, it's good for other organisations, it's good for me as a politician, but I think that's a reassuring piece of work for anyone who doubts, about what is happening for Wales. And I'd just like to endorse my thanks to you, Lily.
Well, thank you, and that gives me a very good opportunity to thank the team for all the hard work.
Absolutely.
Working away over many months and doing a terrific job, and also thanks to our external reviewer as well. Di.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Congratulations on the report. Excellent. I'm Dr. Di Lloyd. I'm a Plaid Cymru Assembly member for South Wales West, which means Swansea, Heath and Bridgend, basically. And I've been a GP in Swansea for the last 35 years. In fact, I was pleased to invite, and in fact, Selina accepted the kind invitation of Josh to come to, because I'm still on the cold faces as we were on a Friday, so we had a delightful Friday in Gowerton and Pencloud a couple of months ago, just to see things in the general practice setting, met my partners as well in the practice and the attached district nurses, the whole practice team, see the challenges. Obviously, we've heard about the problems of access to GPs and stuff. There's always two sides to every story. In my practice, we're 16 doctors and 21,000 patients. So on a Monday morning, we have 700 telephone calls. So there's a challenge in dealing with that, and it's about 400 telephone calls on every other day. But yeah, pleased to be able to show all that, and you can see everything in detail. But it is of course a celebration, actually, I've got to say, in terms of why we're all here. Because back in 1950, King George VI, it would be then, I'm hot on royalty, but anyway, signed 250 birthday cards that year for people who reached 100 years of age. So in 1950, that's 250 birthday cards for people who were 100. Fast forward to 1990, and it's Queen Elizabeth II right now, obviously. She signed 2,500 birthday cards that year for people who were 100 or more. 3 years ago, the last time I looked at these figures, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Queen Elizabeth II had to sign 13,700 birthday cards for people in the UK who were 100 or more. And 2 years ago, she had to sign another 14,500 birthday cards for people who are 100 or more in the UK. Now, that is a phenomenal story of success for our NHS and our general living conditions, if nothing else. It obviously has implications for the monarch's work-life balance. But I shan't dwell over much on that aspect of things. But obviously, as we're all growing older, and the evidence is we're all growing older and fitter as well compared to previous generations. So there is a lot of positive stuff. That's why the 90% enjoying life? Yes, we should. But obviously that has brought then the need to do something with social care. Because back in 1946, when we had the NHS and everything free at the point of need, well, let's be fair, people didn't live that long, especially in Wales. I remember starting to practice in Swansea back in, before Helena was born. But anyway, it was pretty rare for me to see somebody who was over the age of 65 in my surgery then, back in the 80s, this was. It was rare to see somebody in inner city Swansea who was aged over 65. Now, because of the way we triage patients, everybody I see is over 80, practically. It's been a huge transformation in how GPs and how society has developed, and that is a cause of celebration. But it's also a challenge how we deal with that. It's not a burden, it's a cause for celebration. Government has been caught on the hop because we haven't planned for any of this, of how to actually care for people. And that's why I launched yesterday a proposal for a national care service in Wales. That's my party's policy, along the same lines as the NHS. It's funded under general taxation, so social care is also free at the point of view. It's not rocket science, it does for health. Let's remove the fear of paying, remove the fear of having to sell your home for long-term care.
Thank you very much, guys. So we've heard, I think, some consensus there about celebrating, recognising 90% of people are enjoying their life, but lots of issues for all of you. I think about the issue of abuse, inequality, and inequalities in access to services. So it's your turn now to fire some questions in and some comments. So if you put your hand up, we're going to take 2 or 3 questions at a time. And do you mind saying who you are?
Lynn Wallace, I'm the chair of the Welsh Centre for Old People and also chair of the Wales 50 Plus Strategy Forum. One of the biggest problems that I find with older people is the difficulty in walking on the pavements. The number of falls of old people because pavements are so uneven and are not cared for. They're always busy filling up the holes in the road so we keep the cars nice. Why aren't we doing the same with the pavements to allow older people to be able to go out safely and come home safely without falling?
Lovely, thank you. Can you pass the mic to first? I think you have any questions as well.
Mine actually is more of an observation. I've listened to you say, this report is fantastic. We all agree it's fantastic, but we can't move this on our own. We need help, and it's up to you at the Assembly to make this happen. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I will take. We're going to come to this slide next. We'll come take questions this slide, then we'll come to that slide afterwards. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Phil White, Cabinet Member for Social Services and Early Help Regen. The question I want to ask you as AMs, when can we expect to see more money provided for social care areas to help address all the issues that have been raised again by the Commissioner? But that's not the real question I want to ask you, because I won't want to embarrass you all. But loneliness and isolation. We've seen Westminster appoint Minister for Loneliness. We've seen Scotland launch a strategy for loneliness. And you're in Wales, which is Commissioner Reform. Why? We know what the issues are. Why aren't we addressing them? I understand it's a report's correct, that we are expecting that report in autumn. Please could accelerate that, because I think that is one of the most dreadful situations for any people of any age to be in.
Thank you. We'll take one more question. The gentleman there, and then we'll come back to the panel.
Thank you, Helena. My name is Ian Wesley, I'm the Chief Executive at Pembrokeshire County Council. I've recently had the experience of supporting 2 elderly people through the arduous process of CHC funding meetings, and perhaps picking up on Dr. Lloyd's comment at the end, I'd like to ask the panel whether they think that process delivers fair outcomes for elderly people.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've got a wide variety of questions. You can choose any or all of them. So we've got walking on pavements, and the ability to get out and about. Kind of what action are we going to take as a result of the report? What we're going to do, we're going to ask you that as your last question this evening. So that gives you a bit of time to think, what action might be taken as a result of the report? What about funding social care? We touched on that. What can we do more on loneliness and isolation? And the issue about the
basically caused by the fact that healthcare is free, according to need, and social services is means tested and charged for. And then there's this insurmountable barrier quite often that when people have complex, mixed, so-called mixed needs, quite often involving dementia or stroke, but particularly dementia, which we seem to have categorised as a social care situation, whereas in fact it's a physical illness. You know, your brain shrinks, so it's a physical disease like diabetes or heart disease, but we treat dementia as if it's a social care issue, and it's not. I mean, thinking for many years how we can avoid all the difficult tribunal situations, how difficult professionals from the health side and from social services side are always having to argue whose budget we're going to be and how much of this person is nursing, so it's free, and how much of it's social, so it's charged for. There aren't ever any easy answers. Put it in different care settings as well, just to add another level of complexity. They're absolutely unresolvable to such a degree that in England last year, just the whole process of continuing healthcare, the process cost over 3 billion pounds, and that's without anybody getting any money. That was just the process of going to courts, tribunals, whatever. You know, it's extremely complicated. That's why the clear answer is, as I just outlined, treat social care like you treat health. All free, no barrier, no continuing healthcare situation. Then we all fund things rather than at the moment. I think it's a disgrace actually as a society. If you came to see me as a patient with a health issue, and I say, well, actually, Mr. Jones, you know, you've got cancer and stuff, and it's quite complicated, and it's going to be expensive, so you might have to sell your home to fund treatment, and people maybe practicing riots in the streets. There'll be urgent questions in the Senate, you know, and stuff. We don't accept that for health. We accept it for social care, and we should.
Okay, really clear. Thank you very much. Janet, which questions you want?
Well, just following on from Danny on that, the Social Care and Wellbeing Act sort of gave us, when it came in, was a really good piece of legislation if interpreted properly. But what I find that this integration of health and social care isn't happening. There's so many resources actually going, you know, that could actually be shared better. I find when I have constituents who need the actual assessment for continuing healthcare, they can wait well over a year. Sometimes I've got one at the moment, 2.5 years, and you know, it can depend that the family are distraught because they're not really sure where the loved one can actually go and who's going to fund it, and it becomes rather a bigger issue than whether you're losing your house or not. It's a huge issue. So I think that's a really, really good question. I want to see more integration with health and social care, and I would like to see Welsh Government at some stage to come back and review the Social Care and Wellbeing Act, because I do feel that it's not happening as it was originally intended. But I wouldn't mind going on the pavements issue, because in my own authority, you know, what happens, they will actually pay out compensation as opposed to repairing the pavements, and that's gone on for years. But I'm pleased to say our main shop in town now, Llandudno, is having all new pavements. There's a big issue though, because most of the owners of the plot shops, they own their own parts of the pavement, and some of them won't pay for that to be done. So it's the main actual thoroughfare that's owned by the council, and people are delighted because it does make a difference. The number of falls, the costs, the human cost to the individual, but actually if somebody has a bad fall, ends up needing an ambulance, ends up in hospital, ends up with their quality of life. You know, so even though it sounds something mild, pavement, it's a big issue.
It's a big issue, isn't it? It's kind of one of those issues where it feels like responsibility is kind of fragmented, and that's why you end up with this problem, because people are saying, well, it's, you know, we can only do so much, but so it's exactly those sorts of things that we need to tackle, so that we have, you know, communities which enable us to age well, so we're not coming forward when we don't need to, because it's a completely false economy, isn't it? Julie, what would you like to pick up?
Just following on the falls, I think we all know, I know individual experiences of how falling when you're older can really sort of set you back completely, and it can really ruin your life. And so that's why I think it's a very important question about falling. But I think the other point that's been made is to show that you may think that when you think of older people, the many years now, we are struggling to get the finance, and the local authorities are struggling to get the finance. But I think that looking at this all in a holistic way is absolutely essential. And then if I can go on to the...
Can I just show that point on looking at all those issues in a holistic way, and obviously Welsh Government's been working on a new strategy for Asian society. So are you able to say a little bit about that and how holistic that might be, and will it kind of tackle some of these issues?
Well, we haven't launched it yet, but we've been very influenced by Helena's contributions about what we want to do. We want it to be a rights-based strategy so that people know what their entitlements are and they're able to ask for those entitlements, and to be so we want to have it based in that sort of way. And we want to support the idea of the age-friendly communities, because I think they do approach the issue of growing old in a holistic way. And so I'm sure that when we do launch it, we give it an additional impetus, because as already been said, Wales was the first place to have an older persons commissioner. I know Liz was very pleased to say that, and we were very proud to do that, and we want to carry on the impetus that there is in Wales. And 20 years of devolution, we're at 20 years now, and so now is the time to move forward on these issues. So we will be launching the strategy soon, and I hope it will fulfil your expectations.
Oh, I hope so. So
I just want to say something about paying for social.
Yeah, and loneliness and isolation is really important.
Yes, you haven't touched that yet. Okay. Well, just in terms of paying for social care, I think generally when you discuss the issue with the public generally, most people don't have much of an idea what happens with social care. It's not clear, like with the NHS, where we're so proud that it's free at the point of delivery, and the fact that there's born in Wales through Lyra Evans, so we can rejoice in the NHS. But social care is much more obscure, and most people don't even know that they might end up having to pay for care in their homes. So I think it's very important that we get that much clearer. And what we're doing in the Welsh Government at the moment is we have got a group that is looking at how we're going to pay for care in the future, because with the rise in the number of older people, as I have said, this means we have to change our plans and to take into account that there's going to be a lot more older people, and we rejoice in it. But in terms of what we actually do, we will decide before the next election. Professor Jerry Bolton has suggested there should be perhaps a levy, an additional levy to pay for social care, or we could have an additional taxation to pay for social care, or we could perhaps get more resources in the Assembly, so we would be able to make care freer at the point of delivery if we had the resources ourselves to do it. But we're going to come up with a proposal before the next Assembly elections, and then it'll be up to you then, before the voters, whether that's what you want to support or not. But we are discussing it now. But I think it's very important that to realise that for everybody to realise that this is something that maybe all of us will have to go through. We need help at home, we need help. When they need to go into care homes, and we need those care homes to be of a great standard, and we need to give the support there. And also this issue I think was mentioned already about people being worried then about how to sell their homes, which I know does cause a great deal of anxiety. And in Wales we've got a £50,000 cap at the moment that you disregard, which is the highest in the UK, but really that doesn't answer the issue of social care and paying for social care.
So we had a... Yeah, thank you.
Because I'm chair of the health committee here, and we did a review into loneliness and isolation on the community side. And obviously a lot of strands come together in regards to loneliness and isolation. In fact, that review was inspired by your predecessor, who compared the physical effects of loneliness and isolation as being equivalents of smoking 15 cigarettes a day in terms of the death rate from suicide and the equivalents, in mental health issues and all the rest. So it is a vitally important topic, and one that modern society has exacerbated, really, because we see with our post offices closing, our bank branches closing, everything and everybody's encouraged to go online, threats of bus passes and stuff, bus passes is liberating in terms of loneliness and isolation. I've got a couple of patients every day. This gentleman, I will mention his name, he catches the bus in one part of Swansea and he goes on a zipper and he drops off a couple of times and catches it to come home again in the afternoon, and that's his day out. Talks to people on the bus, stops a couple of times, have a tea and coffee and stuff, and home, and that's the day. And the matter is raining, so that's the importance of the bus pass. And he hasn't got a computer, so come on now people, we should be able to organise this, but it is liberating. And because we become less sociable, our even youth get lonely because of all loneliness. So youth clubs, there are few youth clubs. People don't go to church or chapel as often as they used to. There used to be a normal sort of network, different clubs and stuff. We tend to be at home now watching television and stuff, if you're looking at television. But there are challenges there. But there are all sorts of pressures from modern life and modern global telephones and stuff and banking and stuff that just withdraws citizens, and that's a big
So
challenge.
the specific questions really around kind of what are we doing here in terms of strategy or...
We will be launching strategy, loneliness, isolation.
Yeah, so the recommendations on Julie is personally changed on.
I can assure you.
Good. So I'm going to take some other questions now from this side of the room. So there's one there and there's one there. So first question, please. You say you are.
I'm going to stand up because your words are correct. Hi, I'm Alison. I'm from darkest Caribbean. We don't get many pavements in my village, so they don't have to mend them. Might be digging. My point is finance. 2 points in that. Why is attendance allowance such a secret benefit for our older people? I work as a gardener, and most of my customers have to choose between food or fuel. And that's not right in this day and age. So please find out why attendance allowance is secret. And the other is, can we please start helping family carers? You can't live on 16 hours work and carers allowance. It doesn't work. I did it 15 years ago. It didn't work then either. So please address those for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Great questions. There's a gentleman from here. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Malcolm Harris. I'm Vice Chair of Care for Wales. First point I'd like to raise is to say thank you very much to the Welsh Government to identifying social care as being an area of economic importance and also a major pillar in the Welsh economy, which leads me on to my secondary point. That about 18 months ago there was a report which actually identified the positive contribution to the Welsh economy that social care made of about £2.2 billion per year. So I'm wondering why we always look at the cost of social care in Wales and we don't look at the economic benefits, which is significant. But I feel the more we invest, the more we're going to benefit from it. And my third and last point is the idea of a levy. Yeah, I understand that we need to increase the funding in social care to make it more effective. But my concern is that we're
So can you come to your question?
so we're going through. All right, so if I said that, I'll pass it on.
Great. Thank you very much. So I just want to make sure we get as many questions in as possible. Anyone else this side of the room? Sorry, George or Josh. Thanks. Microphone's just on this one. That's all right.
Rita Sainsbury, member of 50+ Forum in Cardiff. I get sick of hearing about cutbacks all the time and blame. It's a cutback, it's a cutback. I'm 71. What I look at is total disorganisation and people who can't do their job, or they don't have the staff to do it anymore. Pavements, for instance, overhanging trees. There used to be a man who walked the streets and he would inform someone there's an overhanging trees, bushes not being dealt with, and pavements. But the main point I want to make is, why aren't the council or the people holding our funds from our tax seeing that our money is spent properly? My husband's a retired civil engineer, so he knows about these things. And there's no one checking the work that's being done by contractors. no one snagging them and telling them you haven't done this properly. Except in Gwynedd, recently, they actually had a road pre-laid because it wasn't done properly. And I think that's very important. And another thing I'd like to ask
Just
is...
one more thing?
Yeah, just one more. That was sort of a statement really, but my main thing is, I think, having dealt with a friend recently, which took me a year, she had dementia, and she was on her own, and I found that the Mental Capacity Act, which I knew nothing about, did not meet the needs of that lady. I know in England they're going to debate it, they've already been debated in Westminster. What are you doing here? Because I think people are at risk. I'm all for people's rights, but when it comes to a point that they're left in danger and allowed to wander at night, because technically they're not sectionable, so there needs to be, and they actually have to be eventually, what is it, something of liberty.
Yeah, okay, so it's about deprivation of liberty. Greta,
Yes.
thank you very much. Got those questions. Does anyone else have a burning question? This lady in the front here, and I'll take that as the last question for this round. Yeah, there we are.
I am Kalpana from New Coalition, and I work a lot in my community. And thanks for this report. I'm just having a cursory glance, and I found that for Bain, you have not got much information. I just wanted to know, is there anything you have in mind that you will be doing in the coming year?
Correct.
And why is it that it is not promoted with the Bain anymore? Wherever I've gone, I went to the Samuels, I went so many places. But the Bain people, I don't know why they are not encouraged or whatever.
Great question. So this is a question about the evidence and information in the report on the experiences of older people from black and ethnic minority communities, which are not that question. But to the panel, choose your questions. There's one on the issue around carers, which I know, Janet, is very close to your heart, about more being needed to be done. Problems about knowing about attendance allowance and claiming it. Malcolm's point about why don't we see social care as an investment, why do we see it as a cost, and it makes a massive economic contribution. And then Greta's point about the Mental Capacity Act, and also about the quality of work that's contracted out. So, Judge, do you want to start this time?
Yeah, I mean, as I've raised about, I do have concerns about carers, both with young carers. I mean, we would actually introduce, as a party, it will be in our manifesto, we would introduce a bursary for young carers, but also too, as rightly picked up about attendance allowance. A number of times that people come in and I say to constituents, are you claiming attendance allowance? What's that? And of course, technically, because it's not a benefit that's devolved, I should be, so I'll go and see your MP, but I actually help them, to fill the forms in and things, and then they just can't believe that this benefit. And it does make a difference. It allows people to spend going on the bus or going out for lunch or whatever, It helps to make the quality of life so much better, because at the end of the day, the billions that are being saved in Wales. What is the figure, Helen?
Well, for pension credit, we know it's up to £214 million, and so pension credit is very poorly claimed in relation to attendance allowance. But I think it's that point about it's massive, and also it's very difficult to know what you're entitled to. So I do think there's more action that we can and should take here in Wales. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we were the best country in the UK for ensuring older people got their financial entitlements? That's absolutely doable if we work together to do it. And that will help individuals and families and our local economies. We should be doing it. I was not supposed to be asking questions.
Yeah, well, took the words right out of my mouth, and being as time short, I won't repeat it. But yeah, the good point about social care being an economic driver, I actually believe in that. That's why I've come up with this thing about having a national care service. The National Health Service, we have excellent terms and conditions of employment and stuff, which are nationwide and stuff, and quite often the high salaries, the top end of nursing, consultants, doctors, surgeons, top physiotherapists, in certain parts of Wales, those are the main drivers of the local economy, those sort of higher than average salaries. We should be able to doing the same for social care. You know, there's about 90,000 people are employed in social care in Wales. We don't know the exact figures because obviously there's a bit of a fragmented system, as we know, the different charities, state sector, private and public provision. So 90,000 plus people, you know, that is a huge economic force, really, and yes, it's not about just about cost. The celebration should be, hang on people, this is an economic driver, and we need to be developing that in the future.
Yeah, and to pick up on that, so I think that's absolutely essential. It is the bread and butter work that is part of the foundation economy, and that's something that the Welsh Government is very keen on promoting of the foundation economy, and we set up a fund that people can bid in order to have new innovative ways really of delivering care in particular, and that's ongoing at the moment. So I absolutely recognise the importance of all that work. I'd like to go to the BAME issue, if I may, because I think it's very important that we do recognise that we've talked about stigma and discrimination, that older people may also suffer discrimination because of race and other reasons, sexuality. And I think it's important that we remember this, and also the things that happen in life to these sort of way things go. And I'm really pleased that the Windrush elders are represented here today, because if you think about what happened to elders, you know, people in our society who lived here and given all their life, and then some of them were asked to go home and suffered in this awful way, I really don't think that we can, you know, ignore the fact that that has happened in our society to our older people. And, you know, Roman, who's there with her colleagues, I know has led the Windrush elders in Cardiff, and it's great that she's here today and that you're here and other people, because we must make sure that any plans we have for older people, our strategy for older people, our strategy for loneliness and isolation, we've just got to make sure that it's inclusive, includes everybody in society. So thank you very much for raising that about the BAME issue.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. And I think, you know, what we found doing the report, and I spoke earlier about whether there's missing information and data, and that was particularly acute, actually, for BAME communities. So there's a big issue about stories and experience being hidden that we need to bring forward. And we will, you know, me and the team will be continuing to work and to go out to older people's groups of different communities so that we're getting first-hand what the issues are, what we can do to help you with them. I'm aware that time's getting on a bit, so I think, I'm just going to look back at, yes, I think it means I can't take any more questions now. So what I want to do is to give each panel member a chance just to say one or two actions that you'd like to take forward from tonight and from the report. Di.
Right, well, from the report, I think elder abuse. I've known about this a long time. I might have mentioned it in a GP for a rather long time. And one of the earliest cases I was involved in over 35 years ago was of, you know, families, you know. People like to think we're all loving and caring and stuff. Well, over the years I've met a few families that have not conformed to that traditional model and have actively abused their elderly relative. Some of it is actual physical abuse, a lot of it is sort of mental, but some of it is financial, you know. And the bit about people sometimes think, the fear of losing your home to pay for care and stuff. Well, actually, there's another fear as well, not just pay for care. Your offspring want to make off with your dwelling, all right? That's a form of abuse as well. Now, as the local concerned GP, it's very difficult to tackle that because, you know, well, you're going to confront the family with that little gem then. So, yeah, it's been hidden. I'm glad you're having a bit of a drive. I need to see how we can tackle this because, you know, there's untoward human rights conditions involved either way, and you can get it on the right way, even by just mentioning the issue, which I have a couple of times over the years, and it never ends well, despite the fact that you're all right. So, as well as I'm determined to sort out social care, by the way.
Okay, good. Thank you. Janet.
Well, as a shadow minister, it's my job really to scrutinise anything that the government bring forward. So I'll be looking, obviously the first protocol will be the loneliness strategy, to make sure that it, you know, it isn't a document you know, the money that's wasted in the system could actually be going towards making life so much better for everyone. So I look forward to working with Julie and Di in doing what we are here to do. As Assembly members, it is our job to scrutinise the work of government and make sure that they are delivering, what they say. Not just writing reports, but actually delivering in their outcomes and ambitions.
Julius, there's something that's scrutiny.
Well, I'm not sorry to mention austerity. So I repeat, austerity is a reality. And as we said, I'm in the government and I'm the Deputy Minister with responsibility for lots of the issues we've raised today. So in some ways you could say the buck stops here. I'd like to say that in a way it's difficult to pick out one or two actions because all of this is very important. But I suppose I'd just like to give my commitment that I want older people to have as good a life as we possibly can give them in Wales, and that I'm very committed to doing that and taking forward, via strategies. But as Janet says, it's not strategies themselves, it's what is the result of strategies, what actually happens, what actually changes things. And I'm very committed to doing that. And although, we have a dig at one another, really, there's more unites us and divides us, I think, obviously, and we do work cross-party as much as we possibly can, because, this is a huge agenda. We don't want to get into party politics, we want to be sure that we do the best we can, and, 20 years of devolution, we want another 20 years of devolution, and we can make things even better than we've managed to do in Wales.
Great, thank you. So,
one thing.
Go on.
Okay. Can I just say it's good to see Nick Bennett here, the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales. Clearly, this event has actually captured, your interest, and it's fantastic to see you because you play a big part in making sure that our services are running as they should be.
Indeed, and Nick and I have been talking closely about a number of things, as you might imagine. More of that another time. So I think I took that as a cross-party commitment to work together on all the issues that were in the State Nation. That's what I learned. Can I thank the panel hugely? Sometimes we say that politicians don't answer questions, but they absolutely did. So if we didn't quite get to all the questions, I apologise. But I know from personally working with each of you, you're personally committed to this agenda, and thank you for your support as well, and for giving up your time this evening. Can you thank the panel very much? Thank you again. And now to round off our evening and to give us some closing remarks, I'm delighted to welcome Linda Wallace, who's chair of the Welsh Senate for Older People. Linda.
No, thank you. Good evening. The trouble with being the last speaker is that I'm going to say you probably already heard this evening. But there's nothing that we haven't heard this evening that doesn't need repeating time and again. What I will say, though, before I start on what I've got written in front of me, I think sometimes we forget who older people are. If we look back, they are the people that sheltered from German bombs night after night, got up in the day, went to work, did what they had to do, and then after the war they rebuilt this country and they rebuilt society. And surely they deserve a little help when they get to an old age. So I think sometimes we tend to forget just exactly who they are. So, now go on to the written bit. When the Commissioner first announced her 3 priorities to age end ageism and age discrimination, stop the abuse of older people and enable everyone to age well, I was very pleased to see how her mind was working and the areas of focus for the 4 years of her term of office. It is amazing how many older people are unaware of the rights that they have or how to go about challenging ageism and age discrimination. The phrase, well, what do you expect at your age, slips out so easily and is used so often that many older people do not even notice it any longer. But it implies that you are not worth considering point of passing away through boredom, she lived on another 2.5 years and had 2.5 wonderful years of life. And he said to her, when she said, I didn't think you'd do this at my age, he said, it's not a matter of age, my dear, it's a matter of need. Now, I would like that on every doctor's door. It's a matter of need, not age. Sometimes ageism is so obvious, as in the media, but at other times it can be quite subtle, and older people do not recognise it as discrimination. It still appears to be okay for the media to use derogatory phrases about older people and get away with it. Names such as bed blockers are used frequently, and there is little or no objection. The use of age discrimination must be brought to an end, and older people need to be aware of what ageism is so they can recognise it and bring it to the attention of others. The abuse of older people is a subject that I've been trying to bring to the forefront for over 10 years, but it is something which most people do not like to talk about, and they don't like to think about it either. It is well hidden from sight. But statistics show us how much elder abuse is happening and how much public awareness is needed for more information available about the numbers of reported abuse. Of course, no one knows how much unreported abuse is happening, and figures on abuse are not broken down by age, so it is difficult to get accurate data. The number of convictions relating to crimes of this type against older people is around 1%. The figure is disgraceful when you look at the figure for the population as a whole, which is 19%. The gap is obvious for all to see, and the police and CPS need to develop a more cohesive strategy to deal with older victims of crime. Investigation into crimes against older people, where the age of the victim has been a factor, should be classed as a hate crime. Support services need to be made more aware with positive training being given in how to deal with abuse of older people and how to pass such information on to safeguarding authorities or the police. Access to judgment for abused older people must be improved. Large amounts of older people are being scammed out of their savings on a daily basis, and more needs to be done to protect vulnerable older people from these scammers. To make communities age-friendly, whatever your age, is ongoing work. There's still much to be done. For older people, the highest priorities are transport, public toilets and pavements. All three of these add to loneliness and isolation for older people, as they are barriers to going out if there is not enough transport or there isn't a loo to use, which we quite often need to use more often when we get older. And if the pavements are uneven, people are scared to go out in case they fall. The difficulty of not being online can be a massive problem for older people, as so many things nowadays can only be accessed by computer. The renewal of the bus pass is a fine example of the difficulty older people face when something so important to them is so difficult to do. Not everyone has someone to fill in the form online for them. The Commissioner's report always brings forward some interesting figures, and the healthy life expectancy of those in deprived areas of Wales is only 50.6 years, which was shocking. With retirement age going up to nearly 70, this has to be a great concern. The difference between men in deprived areas' life expectancy of 73.6 years against the least deprived areas being 82.4, and women in the most deprived areas 78.2 compared to 85.8, just shows that least deprived areas is a real eye-opener, and this shows the level of inequality that exists in our society, and it must be a priority to address this. This report gives us all a lot to think about and shows how important it is that all of us need to support the Commissioner and work towards her aim to make Wales the best place in the world to grow older.
Chat and have some more to eat and something to drink. A huge thank you to all our speakers and our contributors. A huge thank you to my team for all the hard work as well. thank you all for coming, and please do continue to chat. And please do think about the actions that you can take so that we can work